My cabin in Lake Tahoe is finally done.
And I'm breaking down the cost of every part of building my new home because there needs to be a lot more transparency when it comes to construction costs. It took my wife and I 3 long years and a lot of patience to finish this project because Tahoe is one of the most expensive and challenging places to build in the entire country. For context, our cabin is about 2,400 square feet with 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms and a 600 square foot attached garage. We went with a modern aesthetic with the low-pitched roof lines, but we also wanted it to look like a cabin, so you'll see an extensive use of timber inside and out. The other important thing to note is that we didn't lift a finger on this build. Other than the design input and the financing, everything was taken care of by our builder. I'll go through each item in the relative order in which it was completed, and then we'll add it all up at the end to see what the total cost of the entire build was. So let's start with the raw land. We bought 1/3 of an acre in an established neighborhood that's within walking distance to the lake for $230,000. Once we had our blank canvas, it was time to design the house. So we got a land survey and then worked with an architect and engineer to draw up the plans. Everything to get the final plans, including the engineering, was $12,000. We submitted those engineered plans and all the required fees to the local building department in order to obtain our building permit. And that was $42,000 just for the approval to move forward with the project. Then we paid $4,000 towards our builder's insurance and $6,000 for our builder's contingency buffer. And to round out our soft costs, we had to pay another $2,000 for 18 months worth of temporary power and facilities. So up to this point, we hadn't even broken ground on the property, and we'd already spent $296,000. And people still wonder why there's a housing shortage in California. But anyways, with our permit approval in hand, we had to hurry up and wait for the historic level of snow to melt. But once it did, it was time for the crew to come in and clear the site since we had a bunch of trees and bushes where the house was supposed to go. So after the trees were cleared, they did all of the excavation and grading for the foundation, and that was $43,000. They also needed to rent some excavators and other equipment, which was an additional $2,000. Once the trenches were dug for all the footings and the forms were in place for the foundation, they went ahead and poured the concrete for the perimeter and all the piers. The cost to complete the foundation for the house and the deck was $38,000, and then it was an additional $3,000 to pour the slabs inside the garage and for the back patio. Next, framing was by far the biggest single expense, so I split it into 2 categories. One category for materials, which came out to $76,000 thanks to the dramatic increase in lumber prices around the time that we signed our building contract, and the second category for labor that cost us $70,000 because of the very limited and very expensive local labor market. And we can't forget about all the fasteners and brackets that we need to hold all that wood together, so rough hardware was another $9,000. Yep, that's $9K for basically nails and bolts. Altogether, we paid $155K just for framing the house and deck. And I already know what the comments are gonna say. I could build 18 houses in my town for $155,000. Anyways, you can't have a house without a roof, and our low-pitched asphalt one came out to $17,000. All 23 windows and 3 exterior doors were $25,000, including this 10-foot wide sliding door from Andersen and this beautiful Craftsman-style front door from Simpson. We did hit some major supply delays when it came to our windows, which set us back 4 months. Before all the exterior siding went up, the crew installed $1,000 worth of flashing to keep the water out. The cedar siding on the second story and in all the soffits was $12,000 for the material, and all the black corrugated steel siding on the first story was $6,000. The labor to install it all was $8,000, and then we paid another $6,000 for all the staining of the siding, soffits, fascia, and redwood deck and porch. The final piece that tied all the design elements of the exterior together was this pair of custom garage doors, which was $16,105, including installation and the remote access system. At this point, the house was dried in, so the crew could start working on the interior. They started with rough plumbing, which was $27,000, and rough electrical, which was $28,000. HVAC, including the heavily insulated ducting and the furnace, was $25,000, and an interior fire sprinkler system, which was required in our area because of the wildfire risk, and that was $10,000. Insulation was $19,000, and it has been amazing at keeping the house the perfect temperature and our heating bill low during the winter. All the drywall drywall and plaster for the entire house, including the garage, was $25,000. Painting the interior, again including the garage and this awesome powder room, was $19,000. The gas fireplace was $8,000, and this thing puts out a ton of heat. The masonry materials and labor to get this beautiful stacked granite stone surround was $7,000. And personally, I think it's the signature feature of the entire house and well worth every penny. All the naughty alder interior doors and trim were $19,000, and I love how they turned out. Especially all the trim around the windows, which totally makes them look way more high-end than they really are, because we did go with budget windows. Halfway through the progress on the interior, we decided that the cabin needed some more warmth to it, so we dropped another $4,900 on rough sawn wood feature walls throughout the house. We also splurged on custom wood cabinetry throughout the entire house, with these flat front select alder cabinets in the kitchen and pantry for a more modern look, and then these shaker style wood cabinets in the bathrooms and laundry room to mix it up a little bit between the spaces. It ended up being $33,300 for all the custom cabinetry in the house. Another higher end finish that I think was totally worth the extra cost are the countertops. We found these amazing quartzite slabs at a showroom in Reno, and then we had them fabricated and installed throughout the entire house, including the giant island, for $12,000. We went with a handmade tile look on the walls of the kitchen and bathrooms, and then these porcelain tiles on the bathroom floors that looked like natural stone. And then we added this super cool pebble floor in the shower. All the materials and labor for tiling totaled $20,169. We spent $12,000 on mid-range appliances throughout the house, including the laundry and this awesome looking 36-inch gas range from Z-Line. All the can lights and special light fixtures inside and outside the house were $6,000, including this modern chandelier from West Elm in the dining area and these pendant lights over the island. All the plumbing fixtures, including these beautiful brass Kohler faucets and sinks, as well as the toilets and shower fixtures, were $6,000. The flooring throughout the house is a waterproof laminate from Pergo that looks like French oak, and it cost $20,000 for materials and installation. We decided to add electric heating under the bathroom floors, which ended up being an additional $1,800. All the mirrors throughout the house and the custom glass enclosures in the bathrooms came out to $5,000. The finish hardware like cabinet pulls and door handles was $3,000, and the labor for all the interior finishes that I just mentioned was $18,000. The custom metal railings inside and out were $5,000, and they look pretty slick, especially the ones on the front porch. Now I'll move on to the public utility hookups, which were nauseatingly high considering we aren't even that far from the street, but that's California. The gas meter and hookup was $3,592.52. Electric was $3,000, sewer lateral was $7,000, and the water connection was highway robbery at $17,865.92. We installed a Tesla charger in the garage, and that was $817.15, including the labor. The asphalt driveway was $5,000 and had to be done twice because the building department said our driveway was too high the first time. We've got a lot of hungry bears and coyotes in the area, so we had to get this steel trash enclosure installed for $2,699. That covers all the construction, but oh, there are a few other things that we had to pay for. The final cleanup fee, including the interior, exterior, landscaping, and window cleaning, was $6,000, and there was still a ton of dust when we moved in. Inspection fees were $1,570, and believe you me, there were a lot of inspections. Like, a lot. And last, but definitely not least, my contractor's profit and overhead was $95,000. To be fair, he was by far the most reasonably priced builder out of the dozen bids that I got, and he stuck to his original quote. So when we add up everything, the total cost to build my cabin in Lake Tahoe, including the land, was $1,114,298.59. To break that down a little bit more, if you don't include the garage, it works out to $477 a square foot for the living space. And if you do include the attached garage, which is really only missing HVAC, then the price per square foot is $386. And even though the final cost does sound like a lot, our cost to build was a lot cheaper than if we had bought an existing home in the same location. In fact, our cabin appraised for $1.5 million, giving us $375K in instant equity because we built from scratch. We would not have been able to afford this same house if it was already an existing home. And being able to get more house for the money wasn't the only benefit of building. We were able to customize every last detail, including the floor plan and the finishes, to our ideal taste. And honestly, it was one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had, and I would 100% do it again. Anyways, right now our cabin is primarily a short-term rental that's generating some extra income for us, but we also get to enjoy it a couple times a month as our mountain getaway. If you want to learn a lot more about how to build a house, make sure to subscribe and check out my whole series on how we built the cabin, including the financing, the design process, and how to pick the right home builder.